I really need new cables.
Yuck. Need new cables? Yes you do. Custom braided cables just got more custom with the cable mod configurator. First, select either the full power supply cables or custom extensions, your choice of cable sleeving, either Mod Flex or Mod Mesh, with the latter one using nylon sleeving, which is more vibrant in color, but a little bit more stiff, with Mod Flex being very flexible but less vibrancy. Cable Mod supports 8 power supply brands, then you find your model, then add all the cables you'd need for your build with custom lengths as well, and I decided to stick with the basics. And here's the best part. Configure the color per cable, so your color scheme is on point. Link in the description to create your own Cable Mod custom cables.
Goodbye old cable, hello new cable.
What's up guys, Ibra here with Hardware Connects, and our quest to find the best GTX 1080 has begun. It's only been a few weeks since the launch of NVIDIA's GTX 1080 Founders Edition GPU, and while there was a little bit of delay around this time, custom cards have finally arrived with better cooler designs, higher frequencies, and custom component selections. And these are more likely the cards that you will end up choosing or picking over the more expensive Founders Edition GPU. Yes, you heard that right. Many of these board partner cards are going to be performing a lot better, offer cooler temperatures, and potentially overclock higher than the reference card. Today we'll be taking a look at the EVGA GTX 1080 Superclocked ACX 3.0. This card is priced at $650, which is a good $50 less than the Founders Edition. It's categorized as a mid-tier card within EVGA's own GTX 1080 lineup. Below it are the cards without higher out-of-the-box clock speeds, while above it lies the For the Win or FTW and classified versions. Both of those cards cost more, boasts higher frequencies, and includes fully controllable LEDs, and also come with upgraded power components. However, the Superclocked will likely be most popular, and glancing at the specs, the Superclocked 1080 comes with a base clock of 1708 MHz and a boost clock of 1847 MHz. The rest of the specs, like memory clocks, mirror the Founders Edition, and while I don't expect the other modifications to make much of a real-world gameplay impact, it's better than nothing. The design of this card has received some criticism as well as praise. It is more steampunk than streamlined, and some may not like that when compared it to ACX coolers of years past. But let us know what you guys think about this honeycomb accents as well as the color scheme in the comments down below. Despite the inclusion of 2 large fans and an extensive internal heatsink, the card measures 10.5 inches long, which is relatively compact, so the ACX 3.0 cooler hasn't added to the reference card's length. And speaking of the ACX 3.0 cooler, it's pretty straightforward, but there are a number of improvements over its predecessor. There's a fully integrated LED lighting that's not RGB, a pair of double ball bearing fans, upgraded heat pipes, and a new heatsink design for the best heat dissipation. EVGA decided to avoid a direct contact heat pipe base and instead utilize a full coverage copper layout. This may have been an excellent move since the GP104 core is extremely compact, which could lead to direct contact pipes actually missing key areas that require adequate cooling. Right below the upper heatsink, there's also a secondary cooling plate that makes direct contact with the GDDR5X memory and MOSFETs. Here, the heat is transferred through simple heat pads. Facts aside, this cooler feels extremely well built. There are some pieces of plastic, but the use of predominantly metal components leads to a feeling of extreme rigidity and quality. If you recall, EVGA doesn't brand their cards in a generic fashion. The only way to tell it's an EVGA card is typically by their cooler design and subtle branding here and there around the shroud. Well, this time, EVGA decided to display logos everywhere. I mean everywhere, from the sides to the back to the edges. There is an SE mark right below the 8-pin connector that lights up to differentiate this particular card from the other cards within EVGA's lineup. I don't mind this implementation as the card is most likely going to sit inside my case that's underneath my desk, but hey, it's a good step towards allowing this particular GTX 1080 to stand out from the competition. The LED zones on this card are large, white, and extremely bright. They exhibit a cool bluish light that unfortunately can't have its color changed, but can be turned off through NVIDIA's GeForce Experience software. Oddly enough, EVGA's own precision tool, which controls the LED's color on the For the Win and classified cards, can't be used with this one to simply turn off the lighting. It's weird, and while simple white light is quite limiting, if you are looking towards a more neutral build around the black and white components, this could be a perfect solution. The backplate is clean and beautiful. The brushed aluminum finish is definitely one of my favorite looks, and on top of that, it helps cool the rear-mounted GDDR5X modules. And I also wanted to point out that this card uses NVIDIA's reference PCB and components, which means none of them have been upgraded. This is good news for some people since this card will be compatible with standard water cooling add-ons. The I/O consists of 3 display ports and a single HDMI and DVI connectors. EVGA has slightly modified this area with a large grille to facilitate air movement in and around the ACX 3.0 heatsink, but don't expect all that much hot air to be exhausted directly through this area. And speaking of heat, the ACX 3.0 does a really good job with temperatures. It was able to maintain about 75 degrees Celsius and won't throttle in any way despite the superclock's increased clock speeds. That's significantly better than the reference card. The cooler is able to idle its fans during low load situations, which makes this card completely silent. But when temperature rises above 70 degrees Celsius, the fans kick in and gradually increase their speeds to keep ahead of the core's heat production. As you might expect, frequencies remain very consistent regardless of the amount of load or the duration of a gaming session. Now comes the best part, gaming performance, and let's see how well this bad boy performs. And as you can see, the superclocked 1080 performs extremely well compared to the Founders Edition. Realistically speaking, it performs 6 to 10% faster due to a combination of higher speeds and avoiding the throttling we found on the Founders Edition. That's incredible considering the lower price. Switching to 4K and this card still stays on top. The card is also quiet, extremely quiet. At idle, the fans turn themselves off, and even when under load, they're barely audible. While the Founders Edition was already quiet, EVGA's card takes near silence to the next level. Power consumption here is pretty much in line with the cooler running yet a slightly faster GTX 1080. Remember, even though it's overclocked, the ACX 3.0 cooler allows for better thermal dissipation, which leads to higher overall efficiency. Now on to overclocking, and I wasn't able to get this card running any faster than our Founders Edition sample, even though its cooler wasn't struggling at all. Rather, the power limit ended up capping frequencies long before voltage or heat could step into the equation. That's a bit disappointing, but EVGA does promise their FTW and classified cards will feature more power overhead. So in conclusion, the GTX 1080 superclocked ACX 3.0 is an awesome card, especially for the price and the performance you get out of the box. It isn't inexpensive, though its value quotient is substantially higher than the more expensive Founders Edition. One of our main critiques about the Founders Edition GPU was its performance over time. While frame rates and paralleling frequencies start off extremely high, after a few minutes of gaming, both elements end up leveling out at lower points. On the other hand, the superclocked ACX 3.0 performed much better with consistent frame rates without experiencing any throttling. The temperatures were amazing too. It's one silent card with extremely well performance metrics, and for that, we're giving it the Hardware X Damn Good Award. The quest to find the best GTX 1080 doesn't end here. We have a lot more custom GTX 1080 reviews on the way, so stay tuned for that content. I'm Eber with Hardware X. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.